I appreciate and respect the angle that they took, but I just don't think they should have made the second one.
I said the movie is a total madness, and that means it don't make sense.
I think the musical and the music element of it was an expression of his mental health and when his childhood trauma kicks in for
It's
him,
the
man.
feeling of not being wanted and the feeling of not being loved.
The Joker, Folie, I do. That's that
Yes,
correct.
Folie
Uh,
do. Yeah,
oh yeah,
you did say
the
that.
Todd Phillips, Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, The Joker 2, the movie the sequel that they should not have made, in my personal opinion. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Like, I'm gonna talk about the great things that I appreciate. I appreciate and respect the angle that they took, but I just don't think they should have made the second one. The first one was such a masterpiece, in my opinion, so great. Where the second one just, I don't think it lived up to it, and I'll tell you why. In my opinion, like the first one built up, it gave us so much of Arthur Fleck, which was amazing, and then it built up to the Joker, who was just fantastic. And this whole character change and his confidence in the Joker. And you're like, oh my God, I want more of this guy. And then this movie, rather than giving us more of him, you went all the way back to Arthur Fleck. And then you went back to, and I appreciate what you did. I think it was an expression of his mental health and the childhood
Mm.
trauma that he went through. But you didn't give us the Joker. You gave us a little bit element of him in the courtroom, which was great, right? But the musical side of it, and I know there was so much talk, and it's getting really mixed reviews, really, really mixed reviews. Mostly the stuff I've been seeing is very negative. But from my perspective, this is what I think. Like, I think the musical and the music element of it was an expression of, like I said, his mental health and when his childhood trauma kicks in. Because they talked a lot about this in this movie. And just like, because the music came in so randomly, so like, huh? This doesn't even fit in. But I think, again, that's an expression of like, well, that's what people go through when they have trauma. Like, it's not scheduled during the day. Something triggers that off, and then they go through that traumatic incident in their head. And I think that's what the music was supposed to represent, the singing that was supposed to represent. So from my perspective, that's the way I see it. So I feel like Todd Phillips's vision was to express trauma and mental health through a musical. Now, I don't know the guidelines of making a movie or a musical, but I don't think this followed the guidelines of a musical. He done it in his own way to express that. So I appreciate all of that. I think the performances were fantastic. Lady Gaga was awesome, and she done musical. She's great
Mm.
at music. She was awesome at that. Joaquin Phoenix, of course. I mean, the guy's fantastic, absolutely amazing. His character as Joker and everything. But I didn't get Joker. I got more of an Arthur Fleck story. I have to say, I did feel sad for him at the end. I felt very sorry for that. Like that night, I was thinking about it when I went to sleep. I couldn't stop thinking. I was like, I really felt really, really sorry for him because of the
Mm.
traumatic stuff that he went through, the trauma he went through as a child. And then at the end of the day, no one ever loved him. And we're going to spoiler territories, guys, but he was
Yeah, yeah,
never
yeah.
loved for who he was. And even Lady
Mm.
Gaga was supposed to be Harley Quinn, which I feel like a lot of the movie was around her and stuff like that, which I was like, I don't really want to see that, to be honest. I still want more Joker. But even she didn't love him at the end because he was just trying to, they were trying to say that he's two different people, his mental health, he's creating the Joker. And I think what it was like, ultimately, he's him. And that trauma that created the Joker was still him, but he was never loved, even by someone who thought he actually that loved him, didn't actually love him. And then, he ended up getting killed at the end, which was very shocking. I didn't see that happening. But I felt so sorry for him at the end. I actually didn't feel like this. I felt like it's the Joker, man. This is supposed to be a iconic villain in the Batman stories, but I felt so sorry for him at the end that he was never loved, and then he ended up getting killed by not being loved, and he went through all of that. And I was just like, that's what ultimately made me feel. I know this was a standalone movie, and I do want to ask you questions about where do you think this fits in the DC, like DC universe, or that's a universe. And I know it's an elsewhere universe, but that's the DC universe.
Mm.
That guy who killed him, there was something weird about him throughout the whole movie. At the end, you see him slitting his mouth like that. You saw that, right? I'm pretty sure I saw that. He slit his mouth, like like what the Heath Ledger's Joker looked like and whatnot. In my head, I was like, are they going to try and carry it on with this guy? Because technically, Bruce Wayne was still a kid. That guy who stabbed him looked kind of young. Maybe that could be the Joker of that Batman if they make that universe, but I don't know. But
I don't think they
ultimately,
will. I don't think they will. I don't think they will. Honestly, uh, yeah, I don't think they will. It's a messy movie, bro. Even when I came back home that night as well. Don't get me wrong. It's always exciting. You're watching a premiere, bare people on the red carpet. They come and present the film, gets you all hyped up. You watch the film. There are parts of the movie like, listen, bro, cinematography, color grade, music, amazing performances. 100% hands down, they were great. Man, it didn't make no sense to me. Like, when you actually think about it, you're like, damn.
the courtroom, it was just a
Like, so that's why I
courtroom
was so
drama.
specific with my quote. When I sent the quote out, I was like, Todd Phillips did great. He directed very well. Phoenix's performance is amazing. Lady Gaga adds a magical uh, musical element to it. But I said the movie is a total madness. And that means it don't make sense. And I think that's, in a way, I think that's what the movies kind of represent, madness. But there's no coherent story in it where it kind of, the first one, you could at least follow the story and then realize, oh shit, he imagined them scenes. So what's real and what's not real? Where this one, you're kind of like, what the fuck is going? There was one scene in the courthouse that really threw it off for me, where he puts the voice on
Mm,
when he's speaking to his friend
like a
Puddles.
Texan, like South.
Puddles, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was why did they make him do that for? Why didn't he just do the Joker thing? And I think as fans of the comic book and the performances we've seen, we expect a certain amount of what we see, like, a comic book element to it. I've got to say, this is not based on any of the comic books. This is just Todd Phillips writing with his co-writer. But the movie was like this. It's like a wonderful mess of a film that I'll never watch again.
I was just about to say it doesn't have rewatchability like the first one. I watched the first one
No,
just to kind of
the
get
first one
into.
I've seen a couple of
It's
times,
like
bro.
I would class the first one as almost like a masterpiece, bro. It's so
Yeah,
great. It's so good. And like I say, on that one, you can follow a story, you can follow the journey of how he becomes a Joker, the social construct, the trauma he was going through, and he becomes that. And this is my point, man. When he becomes a Joker, it's so exciting, but then the movie ends. And you know what? You could have just left that and be like, oh my God. I wish I had more, but I'm glad I don't because it's a masterpiece. But then when you made number two, there's so much expectations of giving us more of what you left off with part one, giving us that character, and you took it all the way until again the almost the end of the movie, or just that courtroom scene of the movie, and that was it. That's all you saw, and I was like, that's it. Like you didn't give us the Joker. Like this movie's called Joker 2. Like you're supposed to come off. I mean, not supposed to. I don't know. Like you make a decision however you do, but I think the fans expected more of what you gave us from the first one because you just introduced us to him and he was fantastic, and then you completely take him away. I agree. And it doesn't have rewatchability. I do think the mess was what goes on in the mind. The mind is messed up, and I do think that, but I just don't think it took us anywhere. Seeing Harvey Dent in it was a little bit of a geek out moment. The explosion that happened, you see half of Harvey Dent's face kind of like scratched up and everything. Cool. Again, this is the DC universe. Those things will happen. Maybe
yeah.
there's not a Batman. Maybe it's a Thomas Wayne. Well, now Thomas Wayne got killed in the first
No, he
one.
was already killed. Yeah,
They didn't
yeah,
really
that's right.
speak
Yeah,
much about that one, but it's it's a sequel that they shouldn't have made. They should have just left number one how it was. It was a complete masterpiece, and they should have left it how it was. Joaquin Phoenix is absolutely fantastic. Can't take that away from him. He is absolutely amazing at what he does. But like I said, I feel sorry for Arthur Fleck. Like, this is a movie where I've come out where like I feel sad for the villain, someone who just didn't get love from a child all the way up. And this is the beauty about the Joker and the Heath Ledger's one and done. Like you don't know nothing about that. So you don't feel like, oh man, I feel sad for him and I hope nothing bad happens to him. You kind of like this motherfucker wants destruction for the sake of it. And I love it, right? But when you add that element to it, which is great, you can see where he comes from. But man, all the people he ended up killing in the first one, really, he was like they didn't deserve to die, but they bullied him. They bullied him. They disrespected him, and it reminded him of his trauma. It wasn't just random innocent people. It was just, so you kind of like they humanized the Joker so much where it was relatable and whatnot. But in this one, they humanized him so much where you're kind of like, I feel sorry for him and I feel sad for him and whatnot. And I don't want to see a Batman against him because Batman's the hero. I don't want to see Batman beat up a poor guy who's gone through childhood trauma and all that sort of stuff. So really,
Yeah.
it's glad that none of that stuff happened. But at the end of the day, you know, I know you tried to take a different twist on the Joker, but I think with this one, I think it was great on the expression of mental health and trauma, but just overall, it's just like as a movie and as a comic book movie and an expression of the Joker, the character, the Joker.
Doesn't work.
You know, yeah, it wasn't
It
worth
doesn't work,
making
bro.
up
It's
to.
a hard
Yeah,
one. And like that's why I have to be so specific in how I word myself and things. Listen, man, I'm always a fan of the art. I'm always gonna go cinema, regardless. Always gonna go. But they didn't. This was a cash grab, bro. Such a shame. This
that's
was
what
a
it
cash
was
grab.
because the first one was the highest rated R-rated movie at the time before Deadpool and Wolverine made
Billion. It
out
did a
a
billion, bro.
billion. So
It
they
did
were
a
like,
billion.
oh, you got to do another one. And they're gonna just take as much money as possible. It's a shame because it doesn't demonize the first one at all because that's still
No.
perfect. It just does, you know, people are blaming Todd Phillips. The people do the usual. Ah, Todd Phillips, he fucked it up. It's like you know, like I don't get that. He made a
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
maybe yes, there were certain mistakes made, but don't blame him. Like Todd Phillips. But I've seen loads of reviews. Todd Phillips fucked it up. He shouldn't have made number two. He always does this. He makes a number two and fucks it up. He done the same thing with Hangover. Hangover, I don't get, bro. That's a comedy. So I'm twisting to, but people are cussing him about Hangover 2. I'm like, that's a comedy. Like, how epic can you? You know, I know Hangover 1 was amazing. Hangover 2 is just as crazy and
Let's,
amazing as
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
why
yeah,
are
yeah.
you criticizing? Oh, he shouldn't have made a number two. Why? It's just jokes. This one, I can get it. Like, you shouldn't have made a number two because this is a very serious movie and whatnot. With a comedy, I don't get it. But yeah, man, that was my thoughts on Joker, man. You know, at the end of the day, you know, I didn't want to. I'm not going to shit on it and say it was a shit movie. And then we talked about what we thought about, you know, the messiness of it. But I will talk about like I did really feel for Arthur Fleck. Like, forget Joker.
Yeah, no, of
I
course,
felt for
yeah.
Arthur
Like
Fleck. I felt sad for
it's
him,
the
man.
feeling of not being wanted and the feeling of not being loved. I mean,
I was
horrible,
sad, man. I was
absolutely
sad.
horrible.